Hey guys, so I thought I'd make this video about how to make some biltong, as there's been a lot of people asking me about it in and around work and all around, even South Africans asking me how to make the biltong, how do I make the biltong that I make, and I'm going to share this method with you. It's really easy. It's the lazy man's version. I just buy everything off the shelf and put it together. It's nothing homemade, so to speak, and nothing overly complicated. So first of all, obviously you're going to need the meat. I just buy this biltong meat from the Aussie butcher. It's really good. I suppose you could use any type of a steak, a thick solid cut of steak, but for anyone's reference, this is from the Aussie butcher. It's silver side, top side, silver side. It's about $14-15 a kilogram. This is about a 2 kilogram bag, and it makes really good biltong meat. Then you're going to need some malt vinegar. That'll be apparent in a minute. And then for the spices, I just buy off the shelf biltong spice. Nothing fancy. I don't make my own spice. I'm too lazy for that right now. And then just salt and pepper. Some coarse salt and black pepper, just for a bit of extra salt. I like my stuff a bit saltier. Then you'll need some paper towels, as you can see there, and something to lay the meat in when you're spicing it, so that it's not on the counter and everything doesn't run everywhere, and a bowl to put all the meat in when you pour the malt vinegar over. Now for a biltong box, all you're really going to need, there's no need to overcomplicate it, all you need is a big enough container so that the biltong cuts that you have, the cuts of meat, can hang without obviously touching the bottom, etc. And also, so you'll have a big enough, large enough Tupperware container or plastic container. It has to have a lid, obviously, to keep it closed at the top, and a computer fan, or a small little fan that can preferably run off 220 volts, but a small little fan that can suck air out of the box, or if you put it in the wrong way around, it's just going to blow air into the box. Either way it doesn't matter. And then some rods across the top of the box so you can hang stuff off of it, i.e. the meat. Right, so I'll show you what my box looks like. So this is basically just a Sistema tub. It's a 40-liter tub. It's about, how high is this thing? Dimensions are there. Just a normal plastic container with a lid. Nothing rocket science here about it. I've bolted on this 220 volt computer fan that I bought off the internet. Bolted that on there. And then on the other side, you're going to want to make some holes. Now I did it a bit fancier because I have access to a laser cutter and some acrylic, so I made it slightly fancier, but you can literally just poke holes into the side of the container. There's no need to make it this fancy. So that's going to allow the air to run all the way from whether the fan is blowing or sucking. It's going to allow the air to run across there and go across the meat, and hence dry out the meat. Then I have these rods. I have rods like these. These are, I think, aluminium, or you can use just wooden dowel pins. They work just as well. And I've cut these little acrylic holders to put the rods in, hang them off. But you can just poke a hole through and stick the rods all the way through. That's the easiest way and the way most people do it. No need to go overly fancy with it. And the last piece of the puzzle, once your meat's spiced and you need to hang it up, you're obviously going to need something to hang it up with. And for that, all I did was I took some stainless steel wire that you can buy at any hardware store, and I bent it into these nice little hooks. It was not as easy as it sounds because this wire is quite tough, and it took me a while to bend it into a nice hook shape. But you just need some sort of a shape, or anything that you can stick through the meat, so you can hang it up off of the poles that you've got there. So that's all you need. It's essentially meat and biltong spice and a big container with a fan on the side. I know I've got provision for a light bulb, and a lot of people swear by using the light bulb, and I suppose what the light bulb maybe does is heats up some of the incoming air if the fan is set up that way so that the air comes in through the small holes by the light bulb. It heats up the air a little bit and makes the air a little bit drier, but to be honest, I haven't seen a big difference. As you can see, I don't even have a light bulb in there anymore, and I rarely use the light bulb anymore. It doesn't make that big of a difference. So yeah, this setup works pretty good, and let's get ahead. Let's get on, and I'll show you how to prepare the stuff. Oh, one last thing before I forget. What you're going to want to do. What you're going to want to do is also obviously prepare a nice tub of soapy water. First of all, for you to wash your hands in the whole time, and second of all, where you're going to be rinsing all of this stuff off the whole time, and you're going to be rinsing your hands every 5 minutes because they get full of vinegar and spices and all that type of stuff. So that's really convenient. And get a cloth to dry your hands off. Use the paper towels. And that's about it. Okay, so what I've done so far, I've just taken the meat out of the bag. It's a bit messy when you do that. There's a bit of residual blood that still left in the bag. Just throw that down the sink or something. Nice big pieces of meat. Nice solid pieces of meat. That's about as thick as you want to go on biltong meat. You don't want to go thicker than an inch, I would say. So anything from like 1 centimeter to 2 centimeters, that's ideal thickness of cut. And you want a nice solid piece of steak. You don't want like meat that's really thin, like minute steak or something like that. That won't work really well. So you put all the meat in the bowl. I have a tendency to wash my hands every time I touch the meat because it's so sticky and weird. But and then you just drench it in malt vinegar. It's a bit wasteful this, but you can just you don't have to completely submerge the meat, just so that you can kind of mix it in and kind of just turn the meat around. You don't have to soak it in the malt vinegar for like days on end. Some people think you're meant to leave it in there for a couple of hours. That just makes the biltong taste like vinegar afterwards, and it's not right. So basically a lot of people actually skip the step, and a lot of people use different stuff. But this is the way I do it, and it comes out pretty nice. You just want to rinse it off. So basically get all of the residual blood and everything off of there. Get it nice and rinsed until it's, so turn it around a couple of times in the vinegar, get it all soaked, and then we can start basically. And all the loose little pieces of meat and fat and stuff that's stuck onto it, you can just basically get off. So at that point, you're going to get your paper towel. Put this to one side for now. I've got 5 pieces of meat, so I'll probably need at least like 10 of these. I didn't count, so I don't know how many I'm on, but let's say that's enough. And let me get a chopping board to do this on. So basically, this is just to get the most of the excess vinegar off of the meat, because you don't want it still dripping by the time you put the spices on. I like to have it a little bit dry. I don't want to have it very dry, but just enough. I just tap it dry a little bit. Take another one, and just so it's not dripping anymore. That's fine. And then put it in your tray, and then do the next one. These ones can go away for now. So now you're done with the vinegar, you can put that to one side and get ready to spice the meat. There you go, back in the cupboard. I only had a pizza tray for a secondary tray, so that'll have to do. Now these cuts are pretty big, these two. That's fine for me. I'll make it work, but if they're too wide for you, you can always cut them down the length and make 2 separate pieces. That's probably what we'll end up doing after they dried out, is cut them down the length and make shorter pieces of biltong. If your biltong box, what we call it, a box, isn't as deep as ours and the meat's too long, you can always just cut them down the length. So now what you want to do basically is just each to his own liking, to his own taste, drench the meat in spices. So essentially, I've shown you the spice, it's just off the shelf, nothing fancy, nothing custom. So I just sprinkle it over. It gets a bit messy, it gets everywhere, but that's fine, that's part of the process. See, a lot of the seeds went and got on the top of the packet, so they came out first, and they didn't coat everything evenly, but that's fine. So you basically, a lot of this spice tends to fall off anyway while you're handling the meat and stuff, so don't be shy with the spice. A lot of people say you just put salt and pepper on and you leave it so you can really taste the meat. Other people really like the spice. I myself like a bit of salt, and on my meat I like it really spicy, because remember, this is only on the outside, and then this is just my own preference. Like I said, I like stuff nice and spicy and salty, so I put some more salt on and a bit of black pepper, because everything's better with black pepper. But this is literally how I make my biltong, how I spice it. And then I tap it in a bit, just to keep it from all of it falling off the moment you lift it up. Wat toen ik het zal is duidelijk. Rods in, and space your rods evenly, and big enough space in between so that there's sufficient space to hang the meat so that they don't touch each other the whole time. That's just probably doesn't matter that much. So then you're just going to take your stainless steel wire hooks, and all of these have obviously been washed. The rods, the box and the meat trays and the wire hooks and everything's been washed in the soapy water, dishwashing soap beforehand, so it's all clean. And then you're basically just going to hook it through and hang it up. Maybe I should have used the other side of that hook, but that's fine. Before I do that, I keep forgetting this step. I always do. For the first couple of hours, the meat's still going to drip a bit of vinegar, and it's going to look weird because it's malt vinegar, so it's going to probably look like blood, but it's mostly just the malt vinegar coming out of it and off of it. And so just put some paper towels in the bottom of the bin, the bucket, of the box, whatever you call it, and then hang your meat. This one's actually touching the bottom, which is probably not the best, but as the meat dries out, it does shrink a lot. It dries out to like, probably loses 40 to 50% of its weight, so it does shrink a lot, and I guarantee you by tomorrow that piece of meat won't be touching the bottom anymore. But usually I don't like the meat to touch the bottom. You can always put the hook of the hook a little bit more down on the meat if it's going to touch the bottom, just to raise it up a little bit more. Basically, you put your lid on, you plug your box in, and the fan starts spinning. Now it'll draw air obviously from the holes all the way through to the fan, and it'll go across the meat the whole time and air drying it. I've done this during the rainiest seasons of the year, and it doesn't affect the potential of drying. It still works. like 2 to 3 days, and you can start eating this biltong a week, and it's already too dry. So it's really, really quick actually. As for the fact that the meat's not actually cooked, a lot of people were surprised at the fact that the meat's not actually cooked beforehand. It is completely raw meat that's just air dried. That's the traditional biltong way. It's not like, I know a lot of beef jerky is actually slow cooked beforehand. I don't really understand how that works, but anyway, don't worry about germs and bugs and stuff getting onto the meat. The amount of vinegar and the salt content on the surface of the meat, and also the fact that it's being air dried, prevents any rotting of the meat and any germs and any bad bacteria or anything coming onto the meat. This is the way that people, before they had refrigerators, this is the way they used to preserve their meat, is they used to air dry it. The reason for that is because any bacteria, any germs, anything like that, it cannot survive without a high moisture content, and it cannot survive in such a high salty environment. Now the acidity of the vinegar helps, the salt on the surface of the meat helps, and the fact that all the moisture is being evaporated off of the meat means that there's no way any bacteria can survive on here. The meat cannot rot for that reason. Obviously, if you take the meat out of the biltong box after a couple of days and then you put it in your shelf, then there's still the potential for moisture to come back into the meat from the atmosphere, and don't leave it, just leave it on your shelf for like weeks. You'll find it and it's gone off. So the best is, once you take it out of here, you can freeze it, put it in saran wrap or something, cling wrap, and freeze it, or you just eat it straight away. It usually in our house doesn't last long enough to be stored. It just gets either gifted to friends and taken to work, or gets eaten within a day or two of it being dry. So I'll show you guys when the meat's ready in a couple of days. Alright, so it's now a couple of days later. Excuse the way I'm looking, I just came from the beach, had a nice swim. It's now a couple of days later. So there you have it. That's what the piece of biltong looks like when you take it off. Obviously remember to take out the stainless steel wire hook. You hang it off, you see a nice piece of fat there, and the spice is still falling off. So that's basically what the dried meat looks like. Let me quickly cut it up. Perfect biltong. So I guess that's what you want to see. The trick, I try and cut it as thin as possible, because traditional biltong slices are a big electric motor with a big blade on it that the biltong gets fed through, and it slices them quite thin. Obviously with a hand knife it's not as easy, but I try and cut it no thicker than that. And that's traditionally that's how it's consumed. Is it still needs to be nice and soft in the middle and not dried out too much. But again, that's all down to personal preference. So that's how you make biltong. Simple and easy.